I think the topic, the role, and the mission, and the stations of Sayyid Ali Muhammad the Bab. Do you know the Bab appeared at an age which psychologists, sociologists, historians unitedly agrees to be the age of transition. That is to say, everything that humankind over centuries, nay, thousands upon thousands of years, have assumed to be facts, to be the truth, to be unshakable truth. It seems it was all subject to fall. It has started with Renaissance. In fact, all of you know that religion became the source of corruption, especially Catholic Church, especially within Islam, Judaism. So the people have lost their hopes in traditionalism, and also they were faced with modernity. The modernity which actually would shake the foundation of so-called unshakable truth. God, manifestations of God, the manner of creation, whether the world had any meaning. Do we give world meaning, or the meanings are independently exist in the world? What is justice? What is equity? Does God actually creates justice? What does that really mean? And. So Bob, when he appeared, it wasn't an ordinary circumstances. Within the Shia community, there was a crisis. Already you had a school developing in Shia called Sheikhism by Sheikh Ahmad and then Sayyid Kazem, who happened to be the forerunner of the Bab to a certain degree. They questioned some of the major tenets of Islam as she has understood it. So then suddenly you see Bob appears. He on one hand sees the force of tradition. On another hand, He sees the force of modernity. His aim is transformation. His methodology is gradual transition. Make sense? So there is a force of modernity, new, the force of old. These two forces are positive and negative, if you will, are now crossing each other. Those who were European, they said, well, this is exactly what dialectic means. You have twin forces. They combine as a thesis and antithesis, and then you have a new dimension. So when you look at Bob's mission, you have to understand these forces. And in my very humble research on the writings of the Bob, one reason that the people had difficulty with the Bob's writings was because they did not understand these dimensions. And this is why, to be very frank and honest with you, few people in the world actually are familiar with his writings. And to your surprise, to my surprise, in fact, majority of the Persians, to a certain degree, Baha'is are included, are not really familiar with the process of transition of his writings. To the point this cultural, traditional modernity could have created a dialogue and at the same time conflict that Abdul Baha Abbas with his all-embracing wisdom, he determined that the majority of the people of the world are not ready for the messages of the Bob. This is why he made a temporary ruling that it is important to understand the message of Baha'u'llah and then to distinguish it from the messages of the Bab. That was partially why the writings of the Bab was not available that much. However, this young man, I don't know who is Baha'i, who is not Baha'i in this room, and I really do not care because I believe these are the matter of discussion. It has nothing to do whether you're a Baha'i or non-Baha'i. You have to state the facts and you have to search the history. This young man, at his own time, became controversial. Clergies found him to be their enemies. Monarch was not that much satisfied with him. Why? Because he fundamentally challenged all of them. And his writings testifies to it. He wrote at least 2 or 3 very powerful tablets, if you will, to the ruling king. that you better pack your suitcase. This is not the way to honor it. He very directly addressed the Prime Minister. And in fact, one of his chief adversary was the Prime Minister of a city. When you read those documentation, you see how religion, politics, philosophy have come to meet one another at the time of transition. So Paul, with that quality, got the attention of Europeans. This is why his writings, in fact, his major books, such as Persian Bayan, such as Arabic Bayan, such as Seven Proofs, Dalail Sab'ah, they were translated into French by Nicola, and then E.G. Beran from London actually went after it to collect all of his manuscript. So there became a movement in Europe. Who is this young man? And I personally don't believe that they were that much interested whether he was from God or he was not from God. That was secondary. It was that a young man with an unusual background. What do you mean unusual background? He was not a clergy. He was in fact business man. He himself wrote many things about how to make business transactions. But being an ordinary person suddenly challenged the whole system. And this is why it became very fundamentally significant. At the time that he was still under the custody of the king, one day the king's doctor, who was an English man, was asked to visit him. His name is Dr. Corley. I was personally myself very interested to see what Kermit says about the visit. See, it is always remembered as a researcher, as a person who wants to investigate the truth, you just never ever look at one set of documentation to decide the truth. You always have to see what he says, and then you have to decide. Because otherwise it can be biased. And then also it will not be investigation of truth anymore. It will be investigation of the bias truth. This is why everything that you read about anybody, you have to have a willingness, courage to look at the people who oppose him also. And then synthesize it and make your own decision. Make sense? So I was very curious what this doctor had to say. The doctor apparently, when visits him, he doesn't make any comment. Later on, one of his friends asks him, how was your visit with that Al-Shirazi? And he says, well, it was very interesting visit, he says, for me. He says he had al-misbah, the prayer beads. He was playing with it. He was memorizing it. And then while I was talking, suddenly through the person who was interpreter said, I would like to ask you to translate something for this gentleman. And Cormac says he was a very respectful person. Cormac said through the interpreter, this young man, Al-Shirazi, as Europeans usually refer to him, said, listen, my mission, my religion in your country shall spread, becomes notified sooner, deeper than this country where I manifested myself. Cormac said I was surprised, and especially that I was tasked by the Majesty to check his mental sanity. He says, but I became very influenced by the spirit that this young man had, that I didn't mention anything to anybody. I just passed it by. He said, then, Cormac narrates, he says, then I heard that his writings are spreading in Europe. I heard Count Gobino, I heard E.G. Brown are pursuing the manuscripts. Then it dawned on me, wow, Al-Shirazi actually said something in passing, but it seems to be correct. Well, the reason that I am mentioning this, I personally have been working on the writings of the Bab for the last 30 years. There is no major universities in the world that does not carry its collections. UCLA carries the collection, very, of course, poor collection. Amin Banani, late Amin, and I visited that library, but it is listed as a major Middle Eastern work, and in fact, if you go on the UCLA website, Persian Bayan, his chief work, is actually as a manuscript available on the website. So, then Michigan, Ann Arbor, University of Michigan, actually has a collection of the Bab's writings. The reason that I have to go after this because I was tasked to identify the writings of the Bab for the purpose of putting it on the website. Now, with that history that I gave you, when you look at Bab, you have to always consider the forces of modernity versus the forces of traditionalism. You understand? On one hand, the forces of new wave of thinking. On another hand, the people are still waiting for the Qur'an, the promised one, to come and make the world full of justice. He has to be the son of the 11th Imam. And. They believe in a physical resurrection. They believe Muhammad is the seed of the Prophet. They believe that the man who has to appear, not that only he has to be a descendant of Imam, he should not bring any new law. You see that? So on one hand, there is an expectation from the traditionalists, conventionalists, and there is a force, especially in the shores of Europe, that says throughout all of this nonsense, and let's deal with the reality of the concepts such as resurrection, such as God, such as manifestation. And it is very, very, very interesting to note the year that he declares in Shiraz, the same year Friedrich Nietzsche is born in Germany. I am not sure whether any of you know Nietzsche, but one way to understand Bob is to understand how the world operated, especially from the lens of Nietzsche, who actually threw out all of this traditionalism, did not believe that the reality is preconceived. It believed in a postmodernism. He said reality is not out there. You make the reality for yourself, so reality becomes subjective, not objective. And it was completely different from a typical Christian Muslim expectation. So now Bob comes in in a context that is Shia, that doesn't understand modernity, doesn't really understand religion. It is mostly emotionalism. But his content, please pay attention, I'm using two terms. Context versus content. His content is universal, meaning he has to take care of all the forces that are in the universe. But his context is purely Shia and Persian. This is very important when you look at Bob. This is why we divide Bob's periods to two distinct periods. The first period, which is from 1844 to late 1846, beginning of 1847, we call it the era of Bobism. That he declares himself as a Bob. Who are you? I'm a Bob. I am a gate. But the gate meant very specific, very confined. What do you mean by gate? He says, well, do you remember 11 Imam 1,000 years ago? Yeah. This is the 11 Imam, do you remember? Had a son, 12th Imam, do you remember? He said, yeah, you are our man. Good, continue. He says, and do you remember that there were 4 gates for over 70 years? Each one came and said, the hidden Imam told us to tell you this, to tell you that, and then the last one came and said, I have a message from the hidden Imam. I am not going to appear until 1,000 years is elapsed. Oh, really? So what happens to us? Just wait. I come, I see you, I visit you, I know everybody, but nobody knows me. Oh, that is traditionalism, excused expression, very low key in spiritual intelligence. But Bob was dealing with that context. So, who are you? I'm the gate. They asked him specifically, can you tell us, how do you get your messages? He says, well, first of all, in front of 11th Imam, I am nothing. Okay, so how do you get your messages, these new messages that you tell us? Do you get revelation? Do you get affirmation? Well, how do you get it? Why? Because a Muslim in his thinking, Christian in his limitation, where Jesus was walking on the shore and the sea, and then the holy dove, Muhammad, angel Gabriel. So what happened to you? He says, well, I had a dream. In that dream, I saw the head of Imam Hussein and his loved ones were hanging. And the blood was dripping. I went ahead, drank from the blood of Imam Hussein and his followers, and then everything that you see I write, I utter, is from the blessing that I have received because of that dream that I had. He says that in his famous book called Sahife Usul wa Furu, Sahife Adliye. This seems to be the first Persian book that he writes in 1845. So you are still, it came May 23rd, so you see the same period. So the first 3 years, he actually used the terminologies that the Shia will use. But at the same time, when you read his writings, starting with his first book on the first night, you see that he does things that usually you expect Muhammad to do. He starts creating some new laws. Please do not play backgammon. Please do not play chess. Yeah? Why? I like chess, you don't like chess? Backgammon تقصد نباشه که ما چیکار زندگی نمیتونیم بکنیم. When you read his writings from the day one, he who happens to be contextually a Shi'i, the first thing that he does, he addresses the people of the West. Please pay attention, two forces. Western civilization, Eastern civilization, they cross each other, and Bob has to create a dynamic of these dialectic forces. So the first 3 years, which we call it the period of gatehood, Babiyat, all of his writings are contextually written in a religious language, mostly Shi'i dominated. From 1847 in Mahbub, his tone changes. His messages becomes more universal. The chief work that he reveals is Persian Bayan. In fact, that is considered his major work. Persian Bayan, which it has been translated into French, partially it has been translated into English. It's a very difficult book. At Baha'i, a few years ago, I believe, attempted to translate it. He translated a portion of it, but Persian Bayan requires not only Islamic background, you need to know philosophy, especially Greek philosophy. You have to know many of the scholars in Islam, because Bob is synthesizing everything. And then from that synthesization creates a new reality. In Persian Bayan, you see the independent voice now. Not anymore he is a gate. Not anymore he is promoter of Shia. He does not associate himself anymore with the Imam, whether hidden or apparent. He does not uphold the laws of Islam. He actually acts as an independent manifestation of God. The first pages of the Persian Bayan, he deals with one of the most fundamental concepts in Europe and in the East, concept of Mr. God. He is the one who says God, with all of his definition, has to be thrown out. Why? Because anything that can be defined only belongs to the realm of definition, and it is we who create these definitions. So he even changed the heading of his words. During the first 3 years, he used to start his work with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which was a typical Quranic opening passage, in the name of God, who is compassionate, merciful. In the second period, he calls it the period of Bismillah al-Amna al-Abdas, not in the name of God, who is compassionate, merciful, rather in the name of God, who is sanctified above all things. Do you see that? You see what's going on? So he creates a transition, if you will. I will try to work with you, but at the same time, I have to create the transformation in you. Persian Bayan, in fact, defines every concept that Jews, Christian, Muslim felt dear to their heart. But Bob redefines it. Do you believe in Qiyamah, Bob? Day of resurrection. He says, of course. This is what do you mean by the day of resurrection? If by the day of resurrection you mean one day that the people rise from their grave and it is a collective phenomenon, he says, if you take it literally, no, I don't believe in it. He says, what is the grave then? He said, everybody has his own grave. What is a grave then? He says, the limitations that you have imposed upon your own self is your own grave. The day you think, when you talk about anything, you have some framework. This framework helps you to understand things. He says, that is your grave. He says, resurrection means come out of that grave. Resurrection means think out of box. You see that? These are all something that Nietzsche, Kant, Hegel promoted in Europe. And there is, those of you who know me, unless I believe in something which makes scientific sense to me, I do not preach it. I believe faith is something personal. Everybody has his own faith, but when we talk, especially with the people of diverse background, you have to have a verifiable evidences. I have not found any evidence that Ali Muhammad the Bab has been familiar with the works of German philosophers. For some people it's a good news, for some people it's a bad news. For those people who want to say that these were his own work, then he was not influenced by the Western modernity movement, they are happy people. But if there are other groups that they say if he is really the manifestation of God, he has to be aware of everything that was before him and everything that was present. So as you can see, you do not win any argument if you go there. But I personally believe, because I believe in a quantum reality and I believe in a system theory, I believe that it was in the air. When these people started to question the validity of the church practices, that was a forerunner for the law. Because unless these social, political, philosophical forces were there, the context would not have been provided for this new dimension of messages. So I leave it to you, how do you want to go about this? But Persian Bayan tries to uproot traditionalism. So, do you believe in seal of the prophet? He says, of course I believe. You mean Muhammad is the last? He says, yeah. The same as Muhammad is the first. The same as Muhammad is the middle. How? This is how. Reality doesn't have time associated with it. So when you deal in the realm of reality, you see the reality which is eternal in the past, eternal in the future. When it comes into the domain of time and space, you have a space and time contributing to the first, the middle, and the last. He says, therefore, there is a Muhammad in the time and space. There is a Muhammad in the realm of eternity. He said the Muhammad in the realm of eternity is like Christ versus Jesus. Jesus is born. Jesus shall be crucified. Christ is never born, shall never die. John chapter 1, verse 1. John chapter 5. Before Abraham was, I am. I am the beginning. I am the end. I am Alpha. I am Omega. But, he says that means in the realm of reality, there is only one religion. There is only one manifestation. There is only one truth. Therefore, as you can see, if you go with his way of thinking, all of these traditional ways of come and join and become Muslim, become Baha'i, all of them, he throws it out. He says, each religion simply is a manifestation of that reality in the context of the time and space which the capacity of humankind deserves it. Make sense? Man was highly wrong thinker. Even if you do not accept him as a prophet or this thing, he was highly evolved thinker. When they asked him, what is resurrection? Don't you believe in resurrection? He said, of course I believe in resurrection. You become resurrected at your own rate. What do you mean by resurrection? He says resurrection means you identify your ego, you identify your limitations, then you go beyond it. When you go beyond your limit, which there is no limit to your non-limit, he says you are resurrected. And he says resurrection is not an event, it's a process. This is why. He says you are alive, maybe physically. You may not be live intellectually. You may not be live spiritually. This is why he then takes, let the dead bury the dead. He says nobody really understood this. The believers think that the non-believer is the dead. Oh, says, this is in a traditional way. He says, you do not know who is dead. Because everybody is judged based on his own capacity of the grave. Make sense? This is why. If you were instead of this man, you would respond differently. If you had the mind of Plato, when you met Baha'u'llah, you would ask different question. If you had the mind like me, who doesn't know left from right, you ask different question. So Baha'u'llah, wow, he says, who is dead, who is alive? Each one, in his own context, he responds to the context. Another very important thing that Bob mentioned was the meaning of gate. What do you mean by gate? He says by gate means forerunner. Forerunner, what do you mean by forerunner? He says there is a process that has started from the time that human being walked on the planet. Then it needed teachers. This teacher, you call it prophet, manifestation, whatever you may call it. He says each one is a forerunner to the next. Why? He says because reality is not confined to one of them. He said, this is why he says, I have so many things to tell you, but we cannot bear them now. So based on him, Moses is a forerunner for Jesus. Jesus is a forerunner for Muhammad. Muhammad is a forerunner for the Bab. Bab is a forerunner for Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah is a forerunner for the one who comes after him. And this process continues on. So as you can see, he gave you the new definition of gate, which is very postmodernism. It's not traditionalist anymore. That, oh, I am just a gate of the Imam, I have nothing to... Another thing that he, in Persian Bayan, I say this and then I summarize, he tried to identify most of the parables, symbolic terms that the Christian, Jews, and Muslims believed in. You name it, Bob picked it up. Bob, do you believe in a burning bush? I said, what, burning bush? Where is burning bush? Burning bush! Moses talked to the burning bush, do you remember? This is Moses didn't talk to anything. Moses from the day one was who he was. Intrinsically, Jesus was who he was. When Muhammad was born, from the day one, he was the manifestation of God. Then, so what happened to this angel Gabriel? Talking to him, this is all of these things are symbolic. Who is angel Gabriel then, Bob? This is Muhammad himself. Who is the angel of death? Israel. This is Muhammad himself. Who is Israfil? This is Muhammad himself. How? This is because unless you die, you cannot come to life. What? So this is why you believe in a resurrection. First you have to die, then you have to get resurrected, right? He says, so your question has to be, what do you mean by death? He says, by death I mean detachment. Unless you die to yourself, to the vanities, you cannot be filled with a new energy. Baha'u'llah later on picks it up. Die in me that I may live in thee. You see that? So, is Muhammad angel of death? He says all of us are angel of death. Because we teach you detachment. And unless you detach, angel of life cannot come to you. What is angel of life? Get rid of these garbages that you have in your heart, in your mind, and empty the place for me to descend. That's the angel of life. What is this Mikael? You remember Mr. Mikael? He brings you bread in Quran. رَبَّنَا أَنزَلَ عَلَيْنَا مَائِدَةً مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. Bread. They asked Bob, what is this bread? This is bread? This is the same bread that Jesus fed 3,000-4,000 people, but they still didn't finish. Do you remember in the New Testament? Do you read New Testament or you look like a Jew, so you only read Old Testament? In the New Testament, Mr. Jesus was with few of his disciples and they had some piece of bread. Suddenly somebody said, hey, master, a group of people are coming. They were, Mr. Merda, they were a couple of thousand people. And then Jesus said, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. Why are you panicking? We have enough bread. And then they said, what enough bread? We have 3 horse of bread, piece of bread. And then the Bible says, they came and ate it and they were filled and there were some breads. You have to find out who is the baker. We go and find it because I haven't found it. Have you found it, baker? So Bob says, they are giving you the bread that everybody shall be filled, but the bread shall never cease from existence. What is the bread? This is the bread, is the verses that I read. These verses that I reveal, they actually fill you. How about wine? Jesus said, I need wine. Do you remember? Do you remember? Madam, you are already drunk. How about wine? Wine, sharab. He says, I give you sharab too. Red wine, the best wine in the whole world. What is it? He says, Muhammad said it, didn't he say? And everything he said in Quran was the truth, nothing but the truth. Look at his tradition, modernity, how they cross each other. See, I want you to understand how he actually ties in modernity with traditionalism, modernity with postmodernity. This is very important. And this is where you actually understand Bob. Because some scholars just analyze his writings, but some people want to understand what is this man is doing. How actually he can help us in 21st century to move forward. So Bob, he said, yeah, Muhammad, didn't Muhammad say red wine? Where? In Surah Muhammad, verse 17, Muhammad said, if you are a good believer, there are 4 rivers. One river is honey. You like honey? American honey or Persian? No. But in America, when you say honey, it means different things. So make sure you do not get confused. Honey, crystal water, red wine. Wow. Muhammad, in Saudi Arabia, we have none of this. He says, don't worry, in heaven you will have it. In heaven. This is why the Arab said, okay, we are going to wait for that day of resurrection to drink. And then Khayyam appears before Bob. He says, do you really think this is literal? He says, if it is literal, something is goofy. What is goofy? Traditionals say. And please again pay attention. Khayyam, mathematician, philosopher, at the same time knows Islam in and out. So he combined tradition with science, with philosophy, with modernity. He just says, well, is it real? Do you think when Muhammad talks about these 4 rivers, is real? So of course it's real. He said, he really gives you a red wine? He said, yeah, this is what he says. He says, then how come in the same book he tells you not to drink wine? So I don't know traditionalists. Why don't know Khayyam? You are an infidel. What do you mean? He says, no, I just was checking with you. Don't worry, don't worry. A little bit, time passes. He says, let's see. This red wine actually is this red wine that we have? They said, yes. He said, okay, tell me which one is better, cash or credit? They said, cash. They said, so it is here, why do you want to wait for heaven? این نقد بگیر و دست از نصیب بدا که آواز دهل شنیدن از دنیا باشد. Majority of the Persian especially and Arabs who have translated this in Arabic, they think that this man was a very shallow non-worshipper. Right now we find out actually, especially when we compare Rubaiyat with Persian Bayan, how deep this man was. And no wonder when you go to Harvard, when you go to MIT, you will see the footprint of Khayyam everywhere. So, Bob, he says, what is red wine? It cannot be that literal because already as Khayyam and everybody else said, you have it here. Why should you wait for their resurrection? He says, but what does wine do? Have you drunk wine? No, tell the truth. When you drink wine, right, my friend? When you drink wine, then you do not think about anything else, right? This is why majority of the time, if a woman takes you to drink, and you want to drink, that you lose your mind, then you can't do anything she wants. So, mind is a way to lose it, right? Bob said this is exactly what he meant. If you drink from the verses that I have brought, you actually become intoxicated with a new spirit, new dimension of thinking. Then you will see things differently. And it says that we call it red wine. So, I summarize like this. Bob, at his own time, was faced with some challenging question about his own stations. And they asked him, what happened? You started very small. I am just the gate of the hidden Imam. Then you went and associated yourself as an Imam. Then you went and called yourself, I am identified with Muhammad. Then you went and you said, do you know, I am none other than the essence of God Himself. So, they asked him why you did that. Why did you speak in a different modes? Why did you speak in a different stations? And he himself has the answer in one of his major works called Dalail Sab'ah, 7 Proofs. This is what the original is, and then I translated it to English. بنگر در فضل حضرت منتظر. He says, consider the mercy of the one who everybody was waiting for, Hazrat Muntazar. Mazhar Mian Allah, the one whose true station is nothing but a reflection of the essence of God. خود را به اسم بابیت قائم آل محمد در میان خلق ظاهر کرد که این خلق مضطرب نشد. He says the one who was nothing but the essence of divinity manifested himself in a different garment of gatehood or ghaibiyat. He says the only reason I did it was because I didn't want you to become disturbed. Because my aim is not to disturb anybody. My aim is to educate people gradually and gradually. And that was the topic of this session. Why the ball had different modes and stations. I ended with one phenomenon, gait. As you can see, when he used it in the beginning, it had only Islamic connotation. I am the gate of the hidden Imam. When it came to 1849, 1850, means the year that he actually got murdered, he changed the definition. I am the gate of the one who comes after me. Do you see the context change? But although the context changed, the universal content which he outlined in Persian Bayan still remained the same. Every manifestation is a gate to the next one. So Baha'u'llah, compared to the ball, is the promised one. Compared to the next one, is the gate. Make sense? So Babism, in order to be understood, ladies and gentlemen, you have to read his writing while understanding the social context, religious context, political context, and then synthesize it together and create it. Thank you.
If anyone have a question.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Am I right to think that the Bab was living at the same time as Nietzsche and the other one, the two philosophers from Germany? Were they living at the same time? They were.
See, as I said, Nietzsche was born in 1844.
Oh, right.
So, and he lived past the martyrdom of the Bab. So you can say that it was a contemporary of the Bab. And I believe that if you read these two writings, you appreciate Babism in a great deal. So yes, they were contemporary. Yes. Next question.
So isn't it better if, we teach our technique of teaching that saying that, because, we are in an age that everything is different from, of course, there are still a lot of people that are old-fashioned and, so we tell them that, the minute you start identifying your ego and your, you become detached, that's when you are, you are a new race of man, you are a new creation.
See, being a psychologist, I'm very careful how to talk about these things. Because no two people rate of change are the same. Therefore, I don't tell Pardees that you need to change you have to become detached, you are not really detached. These are traditional ways which led to the judgment of humanity and separated us. I am responsible for one person, and that is Habib Yusuf. Resurrection rate that I have is related to my background, to my training, to my environment. Therefore, even two people who live simultaneously from the same parents, same education, their resurrection rate is not the same. Therefore, we have to be real. There is a value when Baha'u'llah says, don't judge. Why? Because no matter what you say is shallow. Because you judge based on your filters about reality. But your filter might not be my filter. This is why Baha'u'llah says, try to talk processes, not who is who in that processing. I do not know who is a Baha'i in this room. I do not know who is what in this room. I have to have a very limited IQ and EQ to judge someone simply because of he has signed a card. This is why these are the benefits of reading the writings of the Bible. Don't judge. Why? Because there is a karma in reality. You judge, you shall be judged. Why am I judged? Because only to tell you that judging was bad. Makes sense? So, the answer to your question is, we all resurrect. And resurrection is not an event. It's not that I resurrect today and I'm done. It is continuous resurrection. This is why you do not say, I am a Baha'i. This is good for psychological defense. But in reality, that is not correct. Nobody is a Baha'i. Why? Baha'i means embodiment of human virtue. We all acquire in human virtue. This is why Shogi Effendi, you are becoming a Baha'i. Becoming a Baha'i means becoming human. Therefore, the resurrection is a continuous process. It's not one-time event. In fact, anything which is associated with an event is not worthy of attention because it is just an event. Event comes and goes. It's like a party. You go there, have a good time. When you go out, you forget everything. The only thing you remember, how much money you have spent on the gift. And then you say, oh my God, was it worth it really? This is why Baha'u'llah wants us to be associated with the process of spirituality. A spiritualization is a process, is not an event. This is why, no wonder Abdul Baha Abbas even, in his prayers for 2 weeks before his ascension, he prays for a steadfastness. He prays to make it. Because there is no such a thing as you have already made it. That is an insult to human being. It is the biggest insult to human being is to tell you that you are perfect. You never want to be perfect. Perfect means dead. Perfect means you are finished. See, that is a traditionalist view. New modern view, I just want to walk in the path of perfection. But I never want to be perfect because there is no limit for perfection. Make sense? Okay.
Can I just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
When you say that the manifestation of God speaks according to the understanding of the people, then how is it that, for example, the Kitab Bayan is written in a way that nobody can understand it? You mentioned that.
Please pay attention. To say nobody or to say everybody, these are very please forgive me. I bow at you. In psychology, either or is a sign of mental distortion. All can understand. Nobody can understand. This is a binary thinking. All the blacks are good, all the Persians are bad. This all is bad. But please pay attention. It's a very good question. This is actually one of the noble questions that Rahmat asked. For sure, when Bob comes, when he reveals something, at least one person in the world understands that, huh? This is why he says, I was waiting for Mullah Hussein. It is through Mullah Hussein that I created capacity in the world. So the reason that the people do not understand Persian Bayan or Agdas or even Republic of Plato, see, I want you to understand it globally. It has nothing to do with Republic. It has to do with our garbages and the background. If you gave, see, the same Persian Bayan, if you gave it to the traditionalist Muslim, he would say, what is this? But the same book was so much praiseworthy for European. Why? Because they didn't have these garbages. So it was a fight between traditionalists, modernists, and postmodernists. Persian Bayan was made with two things in working order. His aim was to destroy. Destroy what? Destroy those nonsense that came into religion. Please pay attention. He actually acted like John the Baptist acted before Jesus. No wonder Baha'u'llah in Kitab Badi compares Bob to John the Baptist. So Bob just wanted to clear things. Bob actually, if you want to understand, Persian Bayan is actually like Iran. Iran is trying to remove the veils. This is why, in fact, one of the titles of Iran is a compilation of Persian Bayan, Mutammam al-Bayan. So, Ramajan, when I said that people do not understand, it means potentially everybody can understand. However, depending on our veils, depending on our background, we have so much veils that does not allow this light to get through. So Bob, one of his mission was to remove these veils. This is why Baha'u'llah's glory shines, because Bob already have removed these veils. This is why Bob and Baha'u'llah are inseparable. In fact, these two are the two chapters of the same book. One prepared, another one claimed.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
In his statement, I was trying to read some parts of Bayan and other books. I think it's written in like older Persian, and it's not in coherent, and it's not in contemporary Persian. It's a little bit even difficult that I'm dealing with literature, Persian literature, and other things. And once I was talking to Mr. Bijan in Chicago, and I asked him if they're interested, I can help them to translate it to more like contemporary Persian. Because I used to go to the church. They have a Bible also that is written. I've read the Bible in the past. I used to go a lot to the church. They got a Bible. It's written about 150 years ago, and it's written in Old Persian. And then they have a newer version of Bible that is written in contemporary Persian. It's more understandable. Perhaps it makes more sense to him or me.
See, I appreciate, in fact, what you say. There is a challenge. There is a challenge with this concept. We have had many good bishops who actually felt the same thing about Baha'u'llah's writings. That some of the Baha'u'llah's writings are antique, classical, Qajarian, but there is a problem. I, as a very humble researcher, I do not consider myself anything. I'm not a scholar of Baha'u'llah, I'm not a scholar of the Bab. But there are challenges. Why? The problem of Persian Bayan, because that is a book we are talking about, is not actually the language. It is not being familiar with the context and the concepts. Bab is a book of concepts which he uses short sentences embodied with a lot of concepts. The similar thing in the Baha'i faith is actually Shoghi Effendi. When you read his English, some people say, let's make it simpler. What Shoghi Effendi actually, for those of you who know his writing is actually a mixture of Bab's style and Baha'u'llah's style. Baha'u'llah writes very smoothly. Bab writes very conceptually. Please pay attention. Bab had to write like that. Why? Because he came at the crossroads. He had to deal mostly with concept. You imagine if it was a simple love mankind, love womankind concept, I don't think European paid so much attention to it. But he challenged the foundation of thinking. When you read the Persian Bayan, you see how much this man, even if you're a scholar, how much this man actually knows Plato. How much he knows Ishraq, Sheikh Ishraq. How much he knows Ibn Arabi. But see, when you read it, you do not see anything that says, this is by Ibn Arabi that I am disclosing and I'm challenging, this is by Sheikh Ishraq. He just says these things. But when you read it, when I read it, I have to unpack it. See, the challenge with Persian Bayan is unpacking. It's not the language. It's unpacking the concept which is in it.
You have to understand the words. If there's like a lot of Arabic words,
that one is very easy. You know what we do? In fact, there is a website we presented to the world called Ocean of Lights. If you go under the Bab's writing, I had this challenge, how to present this thing to the public. And when I say public, I do not mean Baha'is. I mean everybody who is interested to understand what this man is saying. And when I came across that problem, what I did was, I created footnote. I put say there was something that was complicated, I put a number 1 by it, then at the end of the file, when you hit 1, it tells you this actually means this, refers to that. For more information, read this word, that word, that word, that word. because I have to be very faithful to the Bab himself. And I was also governed by one of the standards that the Bab has in Persian Bayan. He says, I do not like people write on the sides of my work. He says, because when you write on the side, hashiyeh, when you write so much hashiyeh, then you forget what is the original. This is why he said we want to separate what is original from what is interpretation, explanation. The same thing applies to Bible. Still the people believe King James Version has to be the one to use. Shogi Effendi, for instance, Rodwell was another translation. But when you look at Rodwell or James translation, King James, it's not simple. This is why when Shogi Effendi chooses the people say, well, Shogi Effendi, why did you choose that? There is a simpler version. But Shogi Effendi, my humble opinion, was concerned which one is closer to the thought processes at the time of Jesus by the author of those four Gospels. Because I do not know what Jesus meant. I do not know what Jesus said. I have to be just closer to this author. The same thing applies to any author.
Because in that time, I think it was like more fashionable to use more Arabic words. And I was just talking to Mr. Vijan, I was telling that in case in the future there's a democracy in Iran and you want to go and advertise and talk about Baha'iyat in Iran, then you have to present in a simple Persian book that they can read it, otherwise they're not.
The way that we do it is very simple, for your information. On one hand, we do not want to translate. Why? I am not thinking religiously. I'm thinking logically as an author and as a researcher. The moment you translate my book, you actually are telling him what I meant to say by that word. This challenge existed at the time of Plato. Plato at his own time became very famous. The people liked one of his words. He said, I am going to translate. Plato said, no way, Jose. They said, what do you mean? We want everybody to understand it. He said, no. How about you do something else? We create a universal language. Please pay attention. This man was genius at that time.
I'm sure he was.
We create a universal language. I rewrite my work in that language. Because what I write is not the word, it's my feeling, it's my thought, it's my culture. Now, in my humble opinion, there is a reason why Baha'u'llah did not allow translation from Arabic into Persian. There were some problems with it. The problem number one, that you can all verify it has nothing to do with the Baha'i faith or anything, is the shortage of words. Actually, for 150,000 Arabic words, you only have about 90,000 Persian words. This is why if I want to say daire, I do not have a word. I have to say gerdaki. If I want to say khat, I have to say sikhaki. If I have to say, I have to say the mathematical expression از نقطه خارج یک دایره یک مماس بر دایره میتوان رسم کرد. From a point outside of the circle, we want to derive a tangent to the circle. This is very good. In English came out good. In Arabic came out good. In Persian, this is the way I have to say it. As پیچکی means نقطه. یک سیخکی بر گردکی میمالانی. I don't think Hisham Beizai wanted you to use the Baha'u'llah's writing in a Pichaki or Sikhati or Gerdaki. This is why
I think
we have.
Persian is a rich language.
I know.
The reason was because recently I've been listening to some scientific things, and when Persian scientists are talking, I hear a lot of new words. Like for example,
I understand.
Mehban for Big Bang that
Exactly.
I didn't know.
Exactly.
Because Arabic
This is
is
why now there is a new policy. Do you know what's a new policy? 18 and we started it about 10, 15 years ago by the late, my dear friend and teacher and mentor, Mr. Fatah Azam, Ushman. When we translated the book such as Bodur of Baha'u'llah from English into Persian, and then we came to the Arabic sentences, what we did was we did not touch the Arabic sentences. We just gave it a number. We went at the end of the book and we said, مضمون بیان مبارک به فارسی چنین است. The essence of this statement in Persian means this. Please pay attention. This revelation is supposed to stand on its feet at least another 800 years, right? At least. So we have to somehow maintain the integrity of the author. Because the moment the book of the author starts to be manipulated, then you have a big problem. So the way to do it, I encourage you to do it, is very good. You can do that with the Persian Bayan. Use the Persian Bayan at the end, actually create mazmoon, essence, and then get the feedback from the people. Okay?
Okay.